Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit, the definitive leadership podcast for your opportunity to learn and grow from real people, boots on the ground, doing it in business every single day. So I get people to come on the show and we have collaborative conversations. We talk about wins, we talk about losses, we talk about business, and we talk about life so that you have the opportunity to listen in and get a little window into what it is that they do. So you have an opportunity to grow yourself and be able to affect your teams in business and help grow the people around you as well. So I am really excited today to bring on the show a new friend. We were just sitting here and chatting right beforehand, Mr. Alexander Vasquez. He is the founder of Aviator Media. He's been in leadership. He's a dedicated husband, a father, and I am really excited to have a conversation with you today, Alexander. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man, and I love that intro, man. That's a intro gets somebody really motivated and hyped up. It's awesome. Good job.
Thank you. So, if you would do me a favor and just share with our audience, just briefly, kind of who you are, what you do, what's your background in leadership, maybe a little bit of what your business does, and then
Sure.
let's have some conversation on what leadership is, what leadership isn't, and let's get people fired up, man.
No, sounds awesome. I'm the founder and owner of Aviator Media. It's a video marketing agency. In simple terms, in a more elaborate sense, it's a creative agency with a lot of strategic behind it. Basically, people hire us to do anything from video ads to social media, and we'll come up with a strategy, and then we'll create the implementation of it, and then just go from there. It all depends on what the owner wants. My background's actually, before I went into business for myself, like full time, it was actually in the corporate world and finance,
Okay.
reconciliation of billing and payroll. And at one time, I was real nerdy when it came to like spreadsheets and stuff like that, because I love attention to detail. Um, so yeah, and then like you mentioned, I've been a husband. We hit 18 years this year. Been together.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We've been together for 21, I believe, and we have four amazing daughters. And she's my best friend, and she's actually the reason why I went into business for myself and left the corporate world. She's the one who actually suggested it.
That's it. Hey, man, that is one of the things. I am a firm believer that when we pick the right spouse, we have the, for us as men, we pick that right queen for us,
100%.
that
Yep.
she can just motivate us and push us and help us grow. And you and I were talking right beforehand. I have three kids myself. I've been married now for will be, gosh, will be 18 years this year,
Hey,
here
all right,
in four
awesome.
months.
Hey,
So hey, we've got that in common.
yeah,
And I've got a daughter that's a gymnast, and you have a wife that coaches gymnastics.
yep.
So that's something we have in common. That's pretty fun. And so she pushes you. Do you push her to follow those dreams as well? You just started to share a little bit beforehand. I wanted to capture that while we were talking.
Yeah, so she on and off throughout the kids growing up, we intermingled between jobs. And at one point when I finally went was full time at the corporate place, she stayed home raising the kids, and she also was babysitting some of the neighbors' kids. But even when she was working before that, we ever since day one, man, we just really connected. Which is to your point about finding the right partner. Um, that's a whole nother topic we can get into at any time you want to, because I'm a
Sure.
firm believer in relationships with the right people and with the right person, and it'll skyrocket everything in your life. And so we've always pushed each other. And since I was working in the corporate world, even before that, since the kids were little, I was always recording them on the phone. I was always making videos of them, adding music to it, etc. But also, even before I met my wife, I had started a few other businesses that they never took off. My first business was like a record label back in like, I think it was 97. And but
Okay.
nothing happened with it. You know what I mean? I produced music back then. Nothing happened. I tried something else. I tried being a promoter at one point on at the club. All these little things. But then I went to the corporate world because you become a family man. You got to start taking responsibility, etc. Anyways, to put it in her words, she said that I had outgrown where I was at in the corporate world. And for her to recognize that, I think is valuable. One of your questions that I've seen that you've asked about was, uh, do leaders have weaknesses? And I think everybody's got a
Mhm.
weakness. But
Sure.
somebody outside of the box, like you could totally lead somebody to a win over and over again. But sometimes you need someone outside of your actual view to see something that you're not seeing about yourself, whether it's more potential or whether you're slacking on something, or maybe it's an oversight. And we've always been best friends since we started dating, even before we fell in love. That's part of why I like talking about that, because she actually made me put the brakes on before anything crazy happened between us, and we actually got to know each other. So then we fell in love, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, she was the one who said, why don't you just mesh your acumen and passion for business along with your passion for being creative and just put them together and see if we can help some businesses. And that's how it started.
That's phenomenal. So let me ask you, because I think a lot of times when we get into, especially like you're in an entrepreneurial role, so you have to be leading yourself and leading others. And so often somebody could come and look at Alexander from the outside, and a lot of people would look, and especially you've got it polished right down on social media and the videos and stuff, and they go, man, that guy's just got it all together. And your wife is on the side of you saying, hey, you do have it together, but here's this thing over here. Because you're right, we get the blinders on as leaders. We're headed this direction, right? And sometimes you need somebody to open that up. Somebody comes in and says, hey, look back here, there's this thing you're not seeing. So let me ask you, how do you handle that? Well, first off, how did you handle it when your wife said to you, hey man, you've outgrown this? Did you just immediately throw it in and start going? And then I have another follow-up question to that. So what was your approach?
I wish I could say that, like, I was like, you're right, let's go. I wish I could say that happened. But something to note before I even answer that question is, before I left the corporate world, I started getting into self-improvement and trying to learn about money and all these things 10 years prior. Like, because I come from a place where sometimes it's just not meant for us. That's kind of like the mentality, or we never had enough money, or yeah, your dreams are nice, but I mean, if you need 2-3 jobs to work and make ends meet, then you have to do that to take care of your family. Family was very important to us growing up. So my parents did nothing wrong in that instance. They really instilled that in my brother and I, but they didn't have any tools that showed them to think abundantly, or even like how to be resourceful with, trying to grow as opposed to being constricted. So I was battling all of that prior to leaving the corporate world. So if you don't already have it, I think some people just naturally are risk takers. It took me a while to really get comfortable with that. I've never worried about going up to somebody to meet them. I've always had that. But when it came to like my own businesses and stuff like that, for whatever reason, there was always this little block there. So I had to really work on that myself. So, go ahead.
I've been there. No, I think I've been there myself, because I think, and call it and I'm speaking for myself, not to put this on you, but maybe we're in alignment. Like, call it the male ego, call it that manhood piece, that it's like, man, I've got to provide for the wife. I got to provide for an upcoming family. I've got these other things that they provide a tremendous weight. It doesn't matter what the title is or what the role is. They provide that unseen weight for us, I think, often as the provider.
So that is the segue, like perfect segue to why I prefaced it with what I had to do mentally first. She mentions it. And in that moment, the first thing I'm thinking of is like, I already know that if I leave this corporate cushy job with the benefits and everything like that, and you're staying at home with the kids, like, I already know that I'm going to probably make way less than, and then that frightens me as a father, because I have to provide. Everything you just said is literally the thing that went through my head, which is why I didn't say yes right away. And then I started thinking some more. And even when I was trying to do music, when Liz and I were dating, she would often say, like, even if I have to stay home while you go out there and promote, I'll do that. Like, so she's always been a supporter and a believer in huge visions and dreams that I've had for myself and us and our family. And
no, that's awesome. I was just going to compliment.
Thank you. And but the thing that this is why, like, anybody who's watching this, who I imagine you have people who are already leaders, or maybe people who are considering entrepreneurship.
Sure.
And I think, so this is just something that hopefully they can take home. I remember waiting in a train. We were inside of like a small little meeting room with a big, whiteboard or whatever. And it was a hazmat training at that particular time. And we walked in. I'm sitting all the way in the back. And this is after she's already suggested that I leave and start my own thing.
Okay.
They were talking about safety the night before and left some diagrams and drawings on the board. And literally, there was writing that said exit, and an arrow pointing towards the door out of the blue, and a smiley face underneath it. Now, here's the thing, because I'm also artistic, before the class started, I drew a smiley face just in some random spot. When I finally sat down, I saw that it said exit to the right, smiley face. And even though I saw that, and in my head, it gave me a little chill, right? I was like, no way. And but despite that, I still didn't leave. But maybe about a couple weeks after that, I finally left. So I don't know if people. I don't think I'm a big believer in signs or anything like that, to be honest with you. But I think that if you're primed to do something and you want to do it, you're just prolonging it, and your brain's going to find other reasons why you should go ahead and do this thing. So just don't delay it. Just jump on it and go.
Well, and I think that's really valuable. That's really valuable insight, because one, not only does our brain start to see those things, I'll give you a couple examples, and I want to go back and touch on something that you said here too. Like, we get primed to see those things. I'm a believer that I think God puts those things in front of us, and it's like, well, he's putting this out there. I got to listen, right?
Right.
And other people show up in our lives like that. And it's the best example I can give. It's just like when you get a new car, right? You think, I'm going to go buy this Lexus or this Ford Taurus or whatever the vehicle may be.
Yeah.
We'll pick a Toyota Corolla, right? That's a basic transportation. And you go, oh man. So you get this Toyota Corolla and you're driving it down the street, and all of a sudden you realize everybody has a Toyota Corolla. Then you trade the Corolla in a few years later, and maybe you buy who knows, a Lexus. It's time to upgrade.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see everybody has that Lexus GS 300. You're like, what the heck? How did I not see this before? And so I think our brain, as human nature, is we are attracted to those things that are supposed to be coming into our lives. You know, just as
that's the RAS at work, right? The reticular activating system at work.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you said too, and I think this is really important for anybody watching the show, or if you're listening to the show later, one of the things that Alexander said, and I picked up on, I try and key in on these things because, and I jotted this down. You said, well, here's the thing, 10 years before that. And you say it in one sentence. And I think when somebody keys into what your life is, they look and they see Aviator Media, and we go, oh man, he's got everything. And you can talk about how a good position you're in right now. But one of the things to realize is that 10-year gap can be spoken about now in an instant. It can be shown on social media in an instant. We don't have a realistic view of time in business any longer because of social media, because of YouTube. You look at some other, big brand names, someone I imagine you're familiar with, Gary Vee, right?
Oh yeah.
For example. Yeah. And so, a lot of people seamlessly, if you're familiar with how he got his start too, you can look and go, oh, okay, well, in 2006, he started Wine Library, and here we are almost 20 years later, 18 years later. We must have a number 18 going on something with us. 18 years later, he's got this massive media company as well. Well, it's literally the click between a video. Here's his start and here's where he's at now. And that's like just what you're saying. It's the click between a video. You say, hey, 10 years prior to that. And people need to realize there is no replacement for genuine time and experience.
Right.
And I think that people often, especially in leadership, we go, oh, hey, you're doing a great job at this, Mike or Alexander, and we're going to promote you into this leadership role. We're going to promote you into management, or you choose to promote yourself into entrepreneurship. And you think, well, just like that, how it happened in 4 minutes, 11 seconds in the video, it's all supposed to take off. But there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
No, yeah, 100%. And that's why I also think that there's so many different directions we can always go in these conversations, which is why I like them also, because I do think there's this weird cadence between doing what you have to do as a father or as a provider, or even if you're just somebody who's just trying to, figure out what you want to do for life and for a living to provide for yourself, and then also chasing what you love or pursuing, your passion. And I think the reason why people say go after what you like or what you love, pursue your passion, and I think there's some truth to that. But it always comes down to, it's because you're not going to get tired of it. I remember when I used to write music or create videos, there'd be times where I just would not eat. I mean, Liz would have to come in at 2:30, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and be like, you got to go to work the next day. Because I was always creating, even when I was in the corporate world. And, but the difference between that is the person that's trying to create something, let's just say they're not pursuing their passion. They just need to make money, or they're trying to retire their parents, whatever the thing is. I think, at least for me, the reason why those other businesses failed is because I wanted the thing really quickly. I wanted the outcome super fast, instead of realizing that it finally clicked what they mean when they say enjoy the journey. And I used to hate that term. I don't understand it. I don't like it. It makes it sound stupid. But it finally clicked what that meant. It's like, if you can find a way to really be passionate about the process and just focus on the actual actions you had to take, the rest will sort itself out one way or another. And I'm a big believer in that. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just was like, you and I are so much in alignment on this that I've got a question in the sidebar too. I don't want to get lost or too far away from this. Luis over here on YouTube says, and this is probably more of an entrepreneurship question. He says, how to know when it's time to leave the corporate world. Have you seen people who regret leaving it? So,
Oh yeah.
I think you touched on that, like how you knew, like that you had your wife say something, you had some signs. Was there anything else there?
So this is just my, and outside of what you and I have like talked about, but even before this started,
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of like mentoring, and I'm sure you do the same exact thing. Wherever you go, if somebody sparks a conversation about entrepreneurship, life, marriage, whatever, you
Sure.
willingly just give the advice. A lot of people won't take it. But so I've often talked to people trying to get them to leave a corporate job if they're not happy there. And I know some people don't want to do that, but other people, they want to, but they're nervous. I've seen people who have left, but they didn't have a single plan. They didn't know what they wanted to do. They just know that they hated this thing. And so they left. And they figured it out maybe after 6, 8 months, but they really struggled hard for those first 8 months, which is why like I tend to suggest, it all depends on what's your actual situation right now. Like if you have babies you have to take care of, you probably can't just jump ship if you have no savings saved up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The thing with that though is that especially right now, and I know people get tired of hearing like right now is the best time to start, but it really is. Like we constantly have more and more tools to leverage and be able to monetize. I mean, an extra $500 a month could go a long way for somebody. You start stacking that, after 3 months, you might be able to leave, on that $1,500. I don't know what the person's situation is, but
Sure.
what I would suggest is that if it's calling you to go and to start your own thing, then you should just do it, and you will figure it out along the way. You just have to recognize you're not going to know all the answers right away. You will never know all the answers right away. And even if you have a plan, a direction, that's the best way to start. And I think it was Martin Luther King who said, I don't remember who it was, so I don't want to butcher it, but you have to start taking the steps in faith, and the next step will light itself up. Something to that nature. And I truly have seen that in real life. And if you have somebody positive that encourages you, you need to really take their advice, because you only need one person to really believe in you. And a lot of times that has to be ourselves. But if you have somebody who has encouraged you, whether that's Mike or somebody else, that's all you need. You just need one person to believe in you for you to just take that plunge into faith and go forward.
Yeah. The Joe over on Instagram. I wish the Instagram comments showed up here so I could share, because he made a comment and he says, yeah, polished is fake. Like if you get to the point where you're so polished and you do know all the answers,
Right.
here's a gauge that I've heard before, just to dovetail a little on what you're saying. You get to the point that you're so polished and you know all the answers, your opportunity has passed you by.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for learning along the way. There's also something to be said about like what you're saying, hey, there's so many other opportunities. We used to, early 2000s, it was always like everybody had a side hustle, right? What was
Right.
your side hustle?
Right.
And now I don't even think it's so much a side hustle as it is like, okay, I've got this thing that I'm doing to provide, because do you need to like it? Yes. But you also have to be able to provide. And then you may have this thing that you love, because passion is fuel. Like there's no question. You said it. Like there's times that you said your wife Liz had to come in and be like, "Hey, you got to stop. You got to work." That
Right.
passion will fuel you through stuff, and that's through a lot of things in life. Like I remember painting my baby daughter's room, and at the time before she was here, I hate painting,
Right. Right.
but
Right.
the passion and the purpose and the result behind it was, hey, there's
Right.
this awesome little girl that's coming. Like that'll drive you. And it's the
Right.
same thing when you get into business. A little different, but sort of same direction. And so I think that's something that is hopefully, Luis, that helps you. And you said, have you seen people who regret leaving the corporate world? Sure. There's people that regret leaving the corporate world. There have been people on the show that have said, hey, I should have stayed. I made a better employee. But there's also on the other side, people that the majority of people that I've spoken with are like, man, I went and never looked back. And there's two statistics that I could share here. If you went back just 20 years ago, I think the number was like 80%. 4 out of 5 millionaires worked for somebody else. I looked at a an updated survey from I think just last year, and they now say 41% of people that are millionaires or multimillionaires are entrepreneurs. So there's been this shift, like 50% of the people have shifted and moved. So
Yeah. I want to add to that if you don't mind.
yeah,
Everything really does come down to a decision. And as long as that decision isn't you like jumping off a cliff, right? You're not going to die. You can always pivot from a bad decision. And sometimes if you reframe it, instead of it being I should have never left the corporate world, you can probably go get another job if you were in the corporate world for a while, right? If you really wanted to. But
sure.
I think if you look at everything, bad decision, good decision, it's all learning. I mean, it's all learning until we're no longer here. So you might as well leverage that. Like I don't use Excel spreadsheets, and I hate Excel spreadsheets now. And I used to live on them. And my biggest hangup, since we're talking about it, I wanted to go into this creative field after being in an administrative office cubicle type situation. I spent 15 years mastering spreadsheets and numbers and billing and all this sort of stuff. And I'm going into something that's completely unrelated. And I felt initially like, I feel like I just wasted all this time. What I didn't realize at the time, though, was that the value that I created by being a manager there and being close to executives and leading a team and learning a lot about money, hands-on experience that way, actually translates over into the business world really easily. And I mean, you find similarities where you're looking, going back to the RAS thing, you're going to find what you look for. So if we're trying to help somebody with a situation, we can find a pattern. If you're looking for a problem, you'll find the problem in the whole. So I think we need to be less indecisive and just more action oriented. And if it's a bad decision, let it ride out for a second. You're not going to die. You'll be okay. And here's the thing I want to mention earlier that Liz told me when we were having this type of conversation. I said, if I leave, we're going to be struggling. This is what I told her. And she's like, we're already struggling, but we're okay. And it's true. We were living check to check, even in the corporate world. And she's like, we're already struggling, but at least you won't be so stressed out and tired. And my commute used to be 3.5 hours going into DC and 3.5 hours coming out of DC. So 7 hours out of the day was my commute. So I'd be stressed, irritated, but it was a nice cushy job. My parents were proud of me. Everybody was like, Alexander has that nice job in DC. That all of that stuff feeds into you. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And keeps you safe. But ultimately, there really is no secure job out there. So if you're able to learn skills that keep you employable to yourself, you'll always be able to be okay. You just have, and I think that's what entrepreneurship really is about. It's less about making a bunch of money and all this other stuff. I think it's more about being a better problem solver in real time. And you just get better the more you encounter different things.
Spot on. I have two different questions and they go different directions for us. And I want to touch on something you said, because people, again, if you're listening on the podcast afterwards, write this down. Leaders are action oriented, right? People that are in leadership roles are action oriented. That's whether you're in the corporate world, it's whether you are an entrepreneur, it's whether you work for somebody else or whether people work for you. The people that lead take action. And that was something, man, you said, and it's like you and I are so in alignment in that on that. I can't even imagine. One other thing that I want to point out, because I got ahead of myself here on the show. We just started chatting right away. For people that might want to connect with Alexander Vasquez of Aviator Media, first off, you can go to Aviator Media and check out thisisaviator.com, spelled just how it sounds, thisisaviator.com. And you can connect with him certainly on a business level, see what it is that he does and such. And then if you want to connect with him personally, he said on all his socials, he is at the Mr. Vasquez. So that's TheMrVasquez, the Mr. Vasquez. So make sure that you connect, because again, just so far, like the conversation is comfortable, but what you've shared too, some of the things that you've hit on are just so valuable. So I would definitely say people. So here's the two questions. I think I'm going to go with this one first because I jotted this down, and as somebody who's an entrepreneur, and we're in a socially, socioeconomically, and so forth. 2023, 2024, there are some people that are they're like, it's all over the place, right? Things are crazy. How do you keep yourself as an entrepreneur, or how would you recommend somebody as a leader keep themselves motivated during times of uncertainty? Because in the last, since COVID, 2020 to now, it's like in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like the whole world starts to move one direction and they're like, nope, we're going this way. And then all of a sudden you're headed this different. Yeah. So we are in some times of uncertainty, and people are trying to grab a hold or how to make things certain. So how do you do that as an entrepreneur? How do you do that as a leader?
So I don't know how people will respond. I think some people will understand this, and I think some people will hate this answer. But I truly believe we can only control what we can control. And so to worry about things that we are completely out of our control, it's almost like the opposite of praying. Because you're fearful, you're living out of fear, and you're going to make bad decisions out of fear. So what that actually means in real time, to be able to control what you can control, I can control how many people I reach out to. I can control how good my service is to people. I can control who I can give to, whether that's advice, mentoring, charitable stuff, resources, my time. The only thing I can control is that, and also, and I'm sure you probably know about this, is like just regulating our state. And one of the best things that keeps me grounded, at least, and obviously nobody's perfect. I mean, there'll be times where like you either talk down to yourself or something will come across your sphere that is worrisome or whatever. But just prayer, in my opinion, and even for people who aren't religious, if you don't pray, even though I'd highly recommend that you do connect to God, but if you don't pray, I think just being super grateful for what is actually going right in your life will help bring you back to what you actually can't control. So in my case, if I'm feeling really stressed out, I have to understand that I'm stressed out with a roof over my head, where I just finished eating breakfast, and I might have a client issue or some other type of issue. But I literally just said goodbye to my daughter. I'm going to school. I talked to my other daughter, who just made me a grandparent for the first time. My wife and I both
saw that.
Up. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, man. My wife and I both woke up with our eyes, which means we had another shot at the day. So there's always going to be something that's a lot to be grateful for. I can use my mouth. I have my hands. So bringing all that back into what you should be grateful for helps, at least me, stay centered and not worry about the things I can't control. Also, I don't look at the news, honestly. And I think I read it in a book a long time ago, during those years where I was really learning and trying to saturate my mind and stuff like that, that if it's that important and that big, and you can attest to this, you'll find out. Somebody in your family will tell you. It'll come across social media. To your point, over the past 4 years, prior to that, I never was really into politics. And then social media really didn't give you a choice. It just like flooded your view with so much of it, regardless of what side you're on. Again, I think certain things we just have no control over. I leave that to God, and I just concentrate on what I can do for my clients, what I can do for myself, my spirituality, my health, my mindset, my family, and the people that I know. I'm just trying to provide, like what you're doing, just trying to give value to whoever's able to use it.
I love that. And it's interesting, the more people that I speak to, especially that are doing well, that are at the top, that are seeing success, like yourself, Alexander, it's becoming a much more common theme that, I had a gal on my show last week that she's very connected to her faith. And that was one of the things she said, are we okay to have that conversation? I said, absolutely. To me, faith and business are intertwined, and people continually bring up, like, I'm grateful for the things that I have. The more grateful the more grateful you are for the things that you have, it seems like then more is provided. Right. And so, I hear that more and more, and that's a message I really want people to hear, whether you're watching or listening. Like, gratitude is powerful. Prayer is powerful. I think we're a species, as humans, we are a species that believes, right? We have a belief system. And oftentimes people want to give God another name. They want to say the universe or, the law of attraction. And we come up with these different things. For me, just like you mentioned, it's very much that's God at work. And I think it's okay to have that conversation. And if you say, if I were to speak to somebody and they say, well, I'm not in alignment with that, hey, that's fine. Yeah. No harm, no foul. But that's, there's a difference between selling religion and being faithful and spiritual, I think.
Can I say something to that real quick?
Yeah, what you just said? Absolutely.
For anybody who doesn't or hasn't read the Bible, even in the Bible, it says, I think it's in James, It even says that the you shouldn't pray if you don't believe it's actually going to happen. And
Right.
so that, I mean, that if you really think about what that actually means, you're praying to God for something to be taken care of, right? And I'm not talking about something materialistic. I'm talking about there's something going on. If you believe that God will take care of it, what you're actually believing is that one way or another, in His divine way, timing, and perspective, it's going to be what it's supposed to be according to Him. You're entrusting that entire thing to Him. And after, and you know that you've done it right when you feel relieved, when you feel the weight off of you. And
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody's perfect at that. I mean, there's sometimes where I'm praying and I'm still heavy, and I know that like I may not be actually truly believing that He's going to see. And it's so
Right.
funny that as humans, how many times has God come through for each of us when we've prayed and it happens? We didn't see how it was going to happen. We didn't see where it was coming from. And then, I don't know, 5 months later, you find yourself in another situation and it's the end of the world again. And,
Yeah.
and it's so we're such creatures of habit. So, which is why I really do think it is important to try to establish something with your creator. He's done so much for us.
100%. I think Jesus is the pure, we say nobody's perfect. He is the one, and He is the best leader. He's somebody that, and I would encourage anybody, and not to sit and try and impress this to my whole audience, but actually to impress it on the whole audience. You said it, Alexander, and I think it's valuable. If you haven't read the Bible, read the Bible. You'll start out saying, well, it's a collection of parables and stories, and you'll come out on the other side going, holy cow, right? This is real. So that's what I believe.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anyone to read that. I just wanted to ask you, what we're going back in time. I should have asked this like at the very
So,
beginning, but here's where we are. How did you get into your first leadership role? Because you said, hey, I went from the corporate world into entrepreneurship and so forth, but in that corporate world there was a time before that. So what was your first break at leadership? Like, what was the linchpin that moved you from, hey, I'm an employee, to a leader? Was it something here in your head? Was it somebody on the outside acknowledging you, saying, hey, we're going to pull you forward? Do you recall that?
so I know what it was, and somebody did have to promote me to it at the time. But what it was the work ethic, and it's so funny because I actually got into that world from a temp agency, believe it or not.
Really?
And they hired me. Yeah, and I had needed a job. I went to a temp agency, and I had done administrative stuff before that. I had done all types of different jobs before that. And they needed somebody to answer the phones. That's all it was. And
Okay.
it was at a busy situation. They told me what I needed to do. They only needed me for a week. I knocked it out of the park. They bought out my contract, and then put me on as a payroll assistant.
Okay.
Again, work ethic, absorbing as much knowledge as possible, being coachable, understanding that this is the person that I am supposed to be making look good also. So let me go above and beyond. So, and then over the course of several years, you just people just keep moving you up into better roles that you expose yourself to. But I think the two key factors there were, number one, really learning what you're supposed to be doing and being really good at it and trying to be your best at it, that strong work ethic. And and I guess there's a sense of ownership right there, right? Because if you're taking
Mm-hmm.
matters into your own hand, you're owning your work. You're seeing where they tell you that you made a mistake, fine. You're not taking it personal, you're just trying to get better. And then the other part is being personable to the people that you are actually serving and servicing. So you're never too good to talk and say hello to somebody who is quote unquote on a lower level than you in the workplace. Like at one point I got to like a supervisor and there were like regular employees, but I was always still the same person with them. And then also being personable with people who are above you, where you're not a yes man, and you're somebody who can actually critically think and give them some type of idea that sounds useful, as opposed to somebody who constantly brings them complaints and problems and stuff like that.
Man, I'm jotting that down too. So far, and I'm just going to recap a few things because I haven't asked you directly, and I will. Maybe I should ask you before I recap this. But several things that you've said. Leaders are action oriented, and for anybody who's taken notes, work ethic I think is such a powerful thing. We like success for anybody that is out there, because I think especially right now we get sold a bill of goods on the internet, like, oh, there's all these sponsored ads, like, just do this one thing and you'll make $1 million, just do
Right.
this one thing and you'll be successful, buy my course and by next Sunday you're going to be, doing all these things. And the reality is that anything worthwhile, anything that is going to be create something tangible for you, and you hit it right here, it takes work.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, gymnastics. Gymnasts don't just go out there and start doing flips. That takes work. What you said, hey, I started as a temp and I worked my tail off, and then I got promoted, and then I worked my tail off, and then I got promoted, and then I worked my tail off. Like, all of the things that are worthwhile that we want to have in life, we hear all kinds of cliche statements, but the reality, and people say, oh, it's all on the other side of fear and all this other stuff. But the reality is, I think a lot of the things that we want out of life, that anybody wants out of life, are on the other side of working your butt off.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's that. You said having a constant attitude of learning, staying teachable. I think you said being personable with people. I think sort of going hand in hand, being personable and staying teachable, because we said it earlier, like, once you think you know it all, one, that there's going to be an opportunity that passes you by. You're going to be viewed as condescending or authoritarian, and people aren't going to work for you anyway. And if you don't have anybody working for you, if you're not leading anybody, you're not a leader. Right. Yeah. So what else were you going to add?
So just two things, just to, for anybody who doesn't know what to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like when I first started out, when I was the first attempt, I needed something to start providing, and because I didn't have a job, and so I just needed something. At that particular point, I always had big dreams and a big vision, but I didn't have a clear direction of what it is exactly that I wanted. Wasn't planning on becoming like some manager at the financial institution that we ended up working at. I just worked. And so I think that if you don't know what to do, as long as you dive in and do your best at what it is that you're doing, whatever that thing is, you'll start to get noticed. And that's kind of the thing. I wasn't looking for promotions. They just started coming to me because I was so focused on trying to do a good job. You know what I mean? So I wish I could say that, like, yeah, I had a plan and I followed it. And that's not the case. So if you don't know where to start or what to do, I think you just get busy with what you have and just do the best at whatever that thing is. If all you got is a paint bucket and a paintbrush and you hate to paint, but that's what you have, go start painting fences and just be the best at it, and be personable with the person. The other thing I was going to say, which you kind of alluded to, how we talked about patterns a little bit earlier, and I think entrepreneurs are really good at recognizing patterns. And you said that everything takes work. Talking about your daughter in gymnastics, from my situation being a temp and then working up, but then even like, I think once you get into the space of really trying to be a little bit logical about what needs to be done and how things work, you start to see that there are patterns all over the place. And one of the reasons why, in my opinion, I have like the best marriage possible is because it took time for us to get to the spot where she would say yes. Whereas prior to her, it was a totally different situation. She really made me fall in love with her without forcing me to fall in love with her. I got to know her. All I wanted was the one thing that I wanted, and she put the brakes on that. And I hate to say that that's kind of how I was, but she put the brakes on that. I had to make a decision. Do I want to stick around and get to know her, or do I just leave? But there was something really cool about it. So we hung out, we played basketball, we would dance, we would go out, we'd have real conversations, we connected. And the next thing you know, boom, I fell in love. And I think that's the key factor there, is that instead of getting the thing right away, that instant gratification, the true things that last and that really fulfill you are the ones that take a while to get there. And that's why it goes back to the whole really trying to submerge yourself and appreciate the process of learning and just becoming, as opposed to just looking for the quick fix.
I love that. So let me ask you, what other, I could hang on that right now, but I got other questions I want to ask you. Like anything in life, relationships takes work, parenting takes work, being at work, right? Being successful in business takes work. Our relationship with God, you alluded to it earlier. Like, hey, it takes work. When we put in the work, we pray, we do those things, and then 5 months later, we realize, oh, I wasn't putting in the work, right? I got to come back home. So, like all of the things, like there is so much value, and that is such a powerful statement, Alexander. That like all of of the things and the patterns in our life take some form of work. Some is more physical and more strenuous and harder than others. Some of it's all right here, right between the
Right.
8 inches
Yeah.
between your ears. But
Yep.
that's just so good. I'm curious, for somebody like you, in a position you're in, when I say like you, that to me, like you've hit that upper echelon, you're a founder at a media company and so forth. You still have to have people, because you said it earlier, like you need to constantly be learning. You got to stay teachable. You got to have people that you're looking to try and find to grow and take yourself to the next level. What are some characteristics that you look for in either other leaders, people that you want to follow, or peers that you're looking to connect with to share a mutual relationship? What are 3 or 4 specific characteristics that you say, hey, I look for this, this, and this?
Sure.
And it may be things we've already talked about, but I'm curious.
So I think more than anything else, someone who is accountable to themselves, someone who like has ownership, and which is the total opposite of like a victim mentality. So if I meet somebody and all they do is complain, probably not somebody I really want to associate with. If somebody always feels like they get the short end of the stick. When I hear somebody like that, I immediately default to wanting to try to help them to get out of that state of mind. But as you probably may be aware, it's a lot easier to say that than to do that. And sometimes it's just
Sure.
it's kind of just pointless. In that situation, you'll win them over by being an example if they're watching you. That's the only thing I can say about that. So somebody who, through their conversation and their way of being, it shows that they take ownership of things going on in their life. Integrity and honesty, but that also takes time to really get to know if someone actually is full of integrity and if they are honest. And I'll be honest, I get that from my wife, and I was not like that before. I was raised to not trust anybody, pretty much. But she came in with a soft hand and a really open, warm heart, and she's shown to me that, like, there's no reason to not trust anybody until they prove that they can't be trusted, and that's valid, and I think that is godly also. So so integrity, honesty, and somebody who actually, in some form, in their own way, displays love. That could be being really friendly to the waiter. That could be opening the door for somebody. That could be talking positively about their parents. So love, integrity, and ownership, I would say, are like the core 3 things I look for.
Those are really good. Those are very well grounded, very good. And I think people, make sure you take note of that it's, when you're looking for a peer, when you're looking for somebody that you can help take to the next level, that you want to help take you to the next level. It doesn't matter if you are, an entrepreneur. A lot of people will say like they're the lone wolf, right? You're out there and
Right.
you got like, you just got to lead yourself. But at the same time, it's like, no, you need really good peers. People, I think you said that the accountability, knowing that you can lean on someone. I think integrity can be a tough one sometimes, because integrity also means that those people that are in your circle are willing to tell you what you need to know and not always what you want to hear. So if you're screwing up, they're going to look at you and say, hey, you blew it here. And that can be tough. And there's a fine line between them trying to cut you down because they don't want to see you get to the next level and being really honest, right?
Right. And then that's why it goes back to who you allow inside of your circle. And that's why I think the more you interact with business owners and just people in general, you start to see as you get older also that not everybody's aligned, not everybody's on the same page, everybody's on their own different thing. But there's some core characteristics that stick around, and who is probably not, whose advice you probably don't want to take, and whose advice maybe you do want to take. So,
sure.
Somebody, I may not, in my head, I may not think I need relationship advice because everything's been so great for so long. But I will tell you this honestly, whenever we see like a couple that's like 75, or an 80-year-old couple, and they're still together and they've been together for like 50 years, that type of thing inspires us. That type of thing is like, it sounds stupid, but we always say like, when we say hello to them, we can't wait to be able to say that we've been together for 50 years. That's really motivational and something for us. And then likewise, and I don't know how much time you spent on any of my pages, because I've dealt with this question before, and it kind of made me think about it when the gentleman said something about nobody's polished, right? Or if you're too polished,
if you're too polished.
And I totally understand what he's saying, and I agree with it. I've gotten on my pages that I post about my family and about our relationship, you really won't see anything negative, and that's on purpose, because it's not to promote something that is like we have the best perfect love in the world. We totally have disagreements and stuff like that. But my whole thing has been kind of like, I know there's enough bad stuff out there that I'm trying to avoid seeing, and problems and gossip. And why would I put any of the issues that we have out there? Now, in a situation like you and I, if there was something that I think could be of value, like a mistake that I made or a mistake that somebody else made, and we learned from it, I could totally talk about that. But to put it out there, why would I point out or put out the bad stuff about a relationship or about a situation? I just believe in putting out positive things, kind of like what you're doing here.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think there's something to be said for like yeah, celebrate the positives, celebrate the wins, high fives and hugs, right? It's just like when in a leadership role or a management role, if I'm interfacing with a staff member, right? Celebrate the wins in public, you high five that stuff. And then they tell you in business, you reprimand in private. So like
right.
those things that need solutions, that has to be handled in private. You have to have a good enough communication. I think that's, I agree with you. It's not about just being polished. It's about celebrating the wins. It's putting out
Right.
the good stuff to the universe. And the more good you put out, the more good is going to come back to you. So if you've got this thing that's in the closet and it's this bad thing that oh my gosh, I got to fix this. At some point, if you're putting out enough good, maybe one of those things that's coming in that's good will help you provide a solution to this thing that you're struggling with, as what I've always believed.
Do that real quick, just because somebody talking about leaving the corporate world and somebody getting into entrepreneurship. A lot of people, when they first start, this is why I'm saying, I know it always starts off usually because you want some type of freedom, or more than not, it's because somebody wants to make money on their own terms or make more money or whatever the thing is. And nobody likes the idea of working for free in the beginning. I'm a big proponent that if you're able to charge something, then go ahead, because you have to live. But don't disregard where there's an opportunity to, like, let's say it's a project that you want to work on. They can't afford to pay you. You're just starting out. If you say no to the project, you still have no project that you're working on anyways. But at minimal, you get the practice, right? And here's the thing. You get the practice of doing this thing that you want to do for this person. And aside from asking for the review and all this other stuff, if you do a killer job on this thing, to what you just said, somehow, some other way, some other good is going to come your way. It happens all the time. So I wouldn't do it because I'm expecting good. I recommend that you just do it because it is good to do for you, for that person, for the start of your journey. And you'll see how it shows up in a different way. It's phenomenal how that happens.
I love that. I was going to ask you a minute ago and it was a perfect segue. And then we're talking about this, and it's so valuable. I always tend to stay on the more positive side of things. Yeah. And I do want to talk about, we got a few minutes left kind of coming down the pipe. What is a time? Because you said, hey, in business, and the gentleman that asked earlier, like, hey, do you have someone that's regretted leaving from the corporate world to this and that? I think it's valuable to talk about our mistakes. And can you elaborate on something? Hey, what's a mistake, or what is a problem that you face that you're like, man, I did not handle this well, but here's what I did to either fix it or change it or move past it. And I think that's valuable for people to hear, like, hey, this was a bomb, and here's what you learned from it, so you could bring that to the audience so they can grow learn from you.
Sure. As it pertains to business or life, yeah. or
wherever direction you want to go, as it pertains to Alexander Vasquez, yeah. Probably business mostly.
I hate to admit that I initially was the person in all aspects when it came to marriage, when it came to parenting, when it came to business. And I don't know if this is something from childhood, right? But I was the person that was wanting to be the lone wolf. I needed to have all the answers, because I am responsible for having the right answer to my wife. I'm responsible for showing my kids what the right answer is. I'm responsible to know the right answer for all my clients. And you start to find out real quickly, especially in business, it's better to let them know that you don't know the answer, but you'll find out, or even pass the project off to somebody else. Nothing disastrous happened, but I mean, you know that they're not getting the best thing possible because that's not your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to and again, I don't know how old your kids are, and I tend to get really emotional, and I'm sure like you do when it comes to like parenting, because it's such a special time. But when I was on my journey, like, of studying and stuff, and just like trying to know all the answers and saturate my mind with positivity and mindset and all that stuff, one of my kids, when they were little, they heard I put a CD in the van, and it was like a compilation of like Jim Rohn talking over some like dramatic music and really good stuff. And
Sure.
one of my kids was like, Daddy, can you burn one for me or whatever? I was like, yeah. But I didn't do it because I wanted to be the one that she came to for mindset, for all this other stuff. And I think that was a big problem. I think the intention was okay because you're your dad, you want to be the right one. But as your kids get older, you start to find out, like Jesus said, you're not a prophet in your own land. So it's better that they get the information from someplace, even if it's not from you. So that's number one. If you're a parent or if you're a husband, it's okay for you and your spouse or you and your kids to learn together, and that shows them that they don't have to be perfect either. That shows them that nobody has all the answers.
Sure.
Business wise, one of the biggest mistakes that I did was in the beginning was not separate the money out correctly. I didn't, when it started out just as a single LLC or whatever, if you don't have that discipline already in place of this belongs to the business, now technically it's all yours because you're a single LLC, but
Sure.
and I'm not giving any financial advice here or anything like that. I'm just telling you.
This is friend advice, not legal or
Yeah,
financial
it's
advice.
like
I got you.
advice or whatever. But I do think that you do have to support yourself. That's why you went into business. But I think if you learn to invest everything back into the business as best you can and keep it in it to hire or to improve on technical stuff that you need, or even in your own training, that goes a long way. And the last thing I would say that really kicked my butt in the beginning was wanting the quick fix and the immediate gratification. Delayed gratification is definitely the secret sauce, in my opinion, to so much. And I think that's why, going back to the Bible, I don't think the Bible is restrictive at all. I think the Bible understands our human nature and our best outcomes when we have delayed gratification and when we actually take more pride and fulfillment in work.
No, absolutely. We're here at the tail end. Do you have any other final thought? We could hang on that, but any other final thoughts sort of to take us out for this afternoon, Alexander?
Honestly, look, I'm sure you've seen some people walk around. I mean, you don't judge, I don't judge anybody, whatever. But I'm telling you right now, if I am allowed to be married to this phenomenal lady, and she's not even in this room, okay? So I'm not even saying it for people, but I say this all the time. To me, this is proof that God exists. If I'm allowed, as crazy and as silly as I was growing up and all the mistakes I've made, if I'm allowed to have the beautiful best friend wife that I have and the awesome kids that I have, I know for a fact anything's possible. So I really don't know what else to say more than that's my constant proof. I'm sure there's something in everybody else's life that they can look to as well. But yeah,
I think it's great. And the best thing, and I will share this with everybody, just from our conversation, such a genuine man in the way you carry yourself. And I'm sure that's the way you operate your business as well. So I think it's just everything in your life. So I am really glad we had the opportunity to connect this afternoon. And
thank you so much.
yeah. And for anybody that has not, I'll give Alexander a pitch again. You can check out his media company. It's thisisaviator.com. So you just go to thisisaviator.com. You can get more information on the business side. And certainly if you've found his wisdom and insight valuable, you can connect with him on social media. He said it's on all the platforms at the THE Mr. Vasquez. So THEMRVASQEUEZ.
Yeah, sorry. I know that last name gets everybody.
No, you're good, man. I really appreciate your time this afternoon and you sharing a lot of valuable insight and wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me. You want to hang out for just a moment while I take a sip?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And that, my friends, is going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Thank you so much for your time. I really value your time. I hope you gained a lot of personal knowledge out of this episode and me having a conversation with Alexander. Just a really good human being. I know that he will operate his business the same way. I would encourage you connect with him because he has so much wisdom to share, and just he's further down the path. So if it's somewhere that you want to head to, reach out to him and connect. I would encourage you also, if you know of somebody else that could gain some wisdom from this episode, please do me a favor. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you're connected. I'm on all of the video platforms. make sure that you throw some thumbs up. That's one way for sure that we, add some likes to this. That's one way that helps get the word out so that more people see this. I'm on Spotify. That's where we put the podcast most often. And so share this with a friend, share this with somebody that would gain some knowledge from it. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And until we speak next, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.